My name is Lyra Quinn, and the moment my boss told me I was too essential to promote, I understood something chilling. I wasn't being held back. I was being used. It happened at the annual leadership brunch, rooftop mimosas, white linen tablecloths, and enough passive aggression to fuel a startup war. I wore cream. I shouldn't have. I should have worn armor. Across the table sat Sienna Vale, our newly appointed chief operations officer. Her blazer was lavender, her sunglasses oversized, her power married, not earned. By the third glass of Prosecco, she leaned across the table like a bored queen tired of feasting on the loyalty of others. You're the backbone here, Lyra. You keep things running. You're the kind of woman every exec needs, someone safe, stable, unshakable. You're dependable. That word, dependable, it landed like a slap. Not because it was untrue, but because it was a sentence, not a compliment. I smiled politely, tilted my head, stirred my drink. Behind my smile, a fuse lit. Because what Sienna really meant was, you're too valuable in the shadows to ever let into the light. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't a colleague to her. I was infrastructure, a living manual, a ghost in the machine, the woman who trained 5 directors but never got a title. The one who covered weekends, rewrote policies, fixed crises in the background, and smiled when someone else took credit in front of the board. I didn't confront her, didn't protest, didn't cry. Instead, I made grievances of systems, access points, audit trails, because I didn't need a tantrum, I needed a blueprint. That night, I opened a fresh folder on my personal drive, title, Restoration Plan, not revenge, restoration, because this wasn't about rage. This was about balance, about realigning a structure that had tilted too far in the wrong direction. Inside that folder, I dropped my first file, a copy of an email Sienna sent to finance, authorizing payment to a consultant with no verified contract. I'd written the scope. She'd replaced my name with hers, then called it her first solo ops initiative. I labeled it Thread 1. By Monday, I had 27 more. Some were small, petty edits to internal decks, others major, like the intern payroll portal she accessed at 1:14 a.m. during a digital wellness retreat. And the interns, half of them never existed, just names, fake IDs, direct deposits routed through shell vendors. Funny thing about ghosts, when you become one, you learn where the shadows hide. And Sienna had been leaving footprints. She thought I'd be flattered to be called indispensable. She had no idea what that actually meant. Indispensable isn't safe. Indispensable isn't quiet. Indispensable is dangerous. And soon, she would learn exactly what kind of threat she'd underestimated. Most people leave companies with a farewell cake and a cardboard box. I planned to leave with a digital landmine. But first I needed clarity. I needed control. And most of all, I needed time. After the brunch, I didn't withdraw. I smiled. I led meetings. I trained 2 new managers. I responded to every Slack message with a thumbs up and a GIF. But at night, I opened a second folder titled Loose Ends. I began mapping her digital footprint. Sienna wasn't sloppy. She was arrogant. She thought rules didn't apply to her. And in this company, they usually didn't. She'd married the founder's son 3 years ago. 2 years later, she had a corner office. 6 months after that, she was COO. On paper, she looked flawless. In reality, she was an iceberg melting from within. And I had the temperature logs. One night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by reports she'd signed but never read. Vendor contracts with matching addresses. Interns paid twice with no timesheets. Budget reallocations marked urgent, with her initials, but with my handwriting in the margins. I didn't steal anything. I recovered what was mine. Decks I'd ghostwritten, campaigns I'd salvaged, legal memos I'd edited at 2 a.m., while she was a strategy retreat in Sedona. My documents were not weapons. They were receipts. I needed one more thing: an opening. A crack in the wall she built. I found it in the most unexpected place. Her husband, Nathan Vale, executive chairman, polished meal. Dangerous in that slow burn, smiling way. We'd never been close. But once, during a late-night emergency when a client threatened to sue, Nathan stayed with me in the war room until 4 a.m. Sienna was unreachable. He watched me rebuild a six-figure account with nothing but a crisis deck and caffeine. Afterward, he called me, the one who actually keeps the lights on. He meant it as a joke. But I'd kept the message, just in case. I waited another week. Then I reached out. Not directly, that would be reckless. Instead, I sent a calendar invite to his executive assistant. Subject: brief process review, archive access, no notes. No context. Just a 15-minute slot on a Thursday afternoon. He accepted. We met in the glass conference room, the one with the bad lighting and the view of the backlot dumpsters. I brought two things, a tablet and a smile. He opened the door, nodded. Lyra. Didn't expect to see your name pop up. I handed him the tablet. Did you approve these? He scrolled. His expression didn't change, but his grip on the tablet tightened. 3 vendor contracts. 2 payroll anomalies. 1 fake wellness reimbursement marked confidential. All tied to Sienna's credentials. All routed through his signature chain. He looked up. Where did you get these? I built the system she's breaking, I said. And I figured the founder's son would want to know what's being done in his name. There was a long pause. He leaned back in his chair. I assume you have more. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, he nodded. This stays between us, he said. For now. I left the room without another word. Back at my desk, I renamed the folder. No longer loose ends. Now it was called Collapse Protocol. And I knew one thing for sure: Sienna thought I was disposable. But I'd just become her audit trail. By the end of the quarter, Sienna had no idea she was walking through a minefield of her own making. And I was just placing the markers. No explosions. Not yet, just quiet flags. Hidden landmines disguised as policy folders and report templates. Because I knew something she didn't. The system doesn't need to be hacked, it just needs to be watched. And I built the system. It started with a document. One she accessed every Monday. A spreadsheet labeled Q4 targets updated. It wasn't malicious. It didn't break any rules. It simply logged the exact timestamp, user credentials, and IP address of anyone who opened it. Every time Sienna downloaded it, the file whispered. She never noticed. Another file was a project roadmap template, a version she often duplicated for her strategic initiatives. Inside it, I embedded a silent data tag that would activate screen recording only when opened from her company laptop. Not malware, just a legal compliance feature, already built into the cloud platform. She had approved the software last year. She didn't read the full feature list. I had. Next, I rebuilt an old folder. Vendor onboarding, updated process inside, nothing unusual. A few SOAP PDFs, a welcome doc, and one file named Form V2B, which was a decoy. If she clicked it, it would trigger a chain of captures: screen record, time log, access map. And because I knew her habits, the way she scrolled, skimmed, searched, I made the file name irresistible. She clicked it within 3 days. Data logged, location traced, session recorded. She never knew. But the most powerful tool I planted was people. I'd spent years helping assistants, interns, junior analysts, the ones she called replaceable. I taught them systems, showed them shortcuts, listened when they vented. Now I reached out, carefully, no threats, no favors asked, just a casual message. Hey, if anything weird happens with your dashboard this week, let me know. There's been a sync issue. 3 days later, I had an export of a Slack thread. Sienna deleted a list of payments she approved under wellness programs that routed to the same PayPal address, and one recording of her saying, "Don't ask compliance. They never get it." The puzzle was forming. Piece by piece, click by click. Then came the call, not from legal, not from compliance. From the chair of audit. "Lyra," she said, voice sharp, "do you have a moment?" I did. She didn't ask how I knew. She didn't ask why I had the files. She simply said, "We need a full chronology." And I said, "It's already prepared." That night, I zipped the folder, named it Chronos. Zip, uploaded it to a private link. Typed a message. Access expires in 48 hours. Recommend immediate download. Then I shut my laptop. Sienna was still in her office, lights glowing behind the frosted glass. Probably rewriting someone else's deck for tomorrow's leadership huddle. She didn't know the room she ruled was already rigged for her undoing. 2 days after I sent Chronos. Zip, the audit chair scheduled a closed-door meeting. No agenda, no invite to Sienna. No mention in the public calendar I knew. Because the assistant who printed the room schedule sent me a photo of the reservation, along with a single word message, fireproof. That same afternoon, Nathan walked past my old desk. He didn't stop, didn't glance sideways, but in his hand, tucked under a legal pad, was a folder with a silver clip, the exact one I'd used for internal compliance briefings. He hadn't just opened Chronos. He was carrying it. The company didn't change overnight. That's not how these things work. Instead, it began with friction. Sienna's access to finance glitched. Her Slack history didn't sync. Her calendar reloaded with duplicates. IT blamed data integrity. She blamed interns. But behind closed doors, the real story spread. Legal was quietly rerouting old contracts. Compliance initiated a legacy file audit. 2 vendor contacts stopped answering her calls. The house wasn't burning yet, but the floorboards were warm. Meanwhile, I stayed still. Let the silence work. Let the system remember. I checked nothing, reached out to no one. Only Claire, my attorney, received regular updates. She was gathering statements, drafting language, preparing for what she called the moment the ceiling cracks. You don't throw punches, she told me over tea. You place weight. Let gravity do the work. And gravity was shifting. Then came the signal, a message, from Nathan, no salutation. Subject timestamp discrepancy body. Looking into intern expense logs. File Q3 entry review. Xlux shows approval during my PTO. Signature doesn't match. Requesting a second copy for verification. Please advise. No emoji, no flourish, just intent. He was in. I sent the second copy. This one included metadata markers, digital trail overlays, and user access snapshots. Clean, legal, undeniable. I added one sentence. Be sure to check cell J43. That cell held the approval timestamp, and the IP address, and the screen capture. It wasn't a smoking gun. It was a live feed of her pulling the trigger. The following day, the head of HR canceled her weekly one-on-one with Sienna. No explanation. Sienna complained. Nobody replied. She started CCing herself on every thread, rechecking her own slide decks, staying late in her office with the lights off, watching the building like it might attack her. One of the interns messaged me. She looks haunted. I almost replied, she should. On Friday, Nathan sent one final message. Subject compliance drop attachment. A PDF with board letterhead. The title read formal request to suspend executive access. Pending internal review, the justification. Evidence of falsified expense reporting, misuse of intern funds, and misrepresentation of executive approvals. Signed by the audit chair. Signed by the general counsel. Filed under the authority of the executive chairman Nathan Vale. Sienna never saw it coming. Because I hadn't fought her. I'd simply let the silence speak. And now, it was screaming. Monday morning came soft and gray, like the sky itself was holding its breath. I made tea, checked nothing, waited. Across town, in a corner office that used to feel untouchable, Sienna Vale tapped her pass card on the glass door of the executive wing. It blinked red. She tried again. Still red. The intern at reception looked up. Hesitant, confused. I think you might need to check with HR. That was the first crack. Inside her office, the phone line was still active, her laptop still powered on. But the dashboard, gone. The budget sheets, locked. The approval portal, user not recognized. She called IT. They transferred her, then transferred her again. By the third transfer, she wasn't angry. She was whispering. Tight, cold. This is a mistake. I'm the COO. A voice on the other end said simply, we're aware, Ms. Vale. Please check your inbox. She did. One email, no greeting. No signature, subject. Administrative hold, internal review in progress, status, all executive access suspended. Sienna didn't scream. didn't storm the halls. She just stood still for a long time, eyes unfocused, mouse gripped like it could save her. She opened her shared drive. It had been renamed Transition Assets of Veil. Every folder, every project, every document she once claimed as hers now sat under a heading that meant only one thing: she was no longer permanent. Just a placeholder. Downstairs, in legal, Claire Brenner stepped into the boardroom in tailored navy, a metal folder under one arm, and a quiet smile on her lips. Inside that folder, 3 sworn statements, 2 whistleblower memos, 1 timeline broken down by date, IP address, and login ID. All roads led to Sienna, all fingers pointed without needing to raise a voice. Claire laid the folder on the table, said one sentence. You'll find her digital signature on every document. She left the trail herself. The board didn't argue. They didn't need to. At 3:14 p.m., a courier arrived at Sienna's door. She opened it like she was expecting salvation. Instead, she found a single envelope. Inside, notification of immediate administrative leave, a request to return all company property, an NDA, a clause confirming cooperation with the ongoing audit, and a final line, in bold, please do not return to the premises until contacted by compliance. She left that evening without a word. No goodbyes, no excuses, just silence. The same kind she'd once weaponized against everyone she thought beneath her. Now it wrapped around her like a verdict. I got the news in a text. From Claire, 3 words, the tower fell. I didn't smile. I just closed my laptop and looked out the window at the city below. Glass towers and blinking lights, and people walking fast toward futures they thought were safe. And I thought some stories don't need fire to burn. Some people collapse the same way they rose on other people's shoulders. 2 weeks later, her name was gone. Not just from the door, from the website, from the announcements, from the systems I used to keep alive for her. The title of COO now read, vacant, pending audit conclusion. The leadership tab was updated with a placeholder photo. Even the HR portal removed her headshot from the welcome page. Sienna Vale had been erased, not fired, not sued, just removed, like a corrupted file, like she'd never existed. And no one said a word. That was the most poetic part. Meanwhile, I was 3 blocks away, in a different building, with new team, new badge, my name, right there on the org chart, not the top, not yet. But visible, the position, Director of Systems Architecture, the job, redesigning legacy corporate infrastructures, ethically, transparently, securely. I didn't need a crown, I needed clarity, and I had it. Claire sent me one last email. Subject, your legacy is safe inside. A screenshot of the final board vote, a signed statement of full whistleblower protection, a document noting the reallocation of internal credit for 2 major strategic frameworks, now bearing my name. It was done, no parades, no applause, just balance, just truth, just me. The apartment was quiet that night. I poured wine, opened my laptop, typed a single sentence in my journal. I didn't break the system, I let it expose itself. Then I closed the journal and turned off the screen. Outside, the city moved on. New meetings, new hires, new mistakes waiting to be made. But none of them would ever be mine again, because I had rewritten my exit, not with rage, not with ruin, but with receipts, silence, and strategy. And just before I went to bed, I played back a voicemail I'd saved but never listened to. It was from Sienna, breathy, angry, shaken. You think you've won, but you'll regret this. I smiled. Not because she was wrong, but because she finally saw it. I was never just dependable. I was the system. And now, the system had moved on. Without her. Some stories aren't about screaming louder. They're about knowing when to whisper and where to leave the mic. Lyra didn't fight dirty. She didn't sabotage. She didn't even raise her voice. She simply did something far more dangerous in a broken system. She kept the receipts. She waited. And when the time came, she didn't just leave the room. She rewired it. Let this story remind you, you don't need a title to have power. Being dependable is not the same as being invisible. And when they call you irreplaceable but refuse to promote you, they're not complimenting you. They're trying to keep you quiet. Don't let them. Speak when it counts. Document everything. And if they underestimate you, smile. Because some of the most devastating moves in life are executed in silence. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever been the ghost who held up the empire, drop your story in the comments. We read every one. And if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, share, subscribe. Because sometimes the best revenge is making sure the story gets told. We'll see you in the next one. Stay sharp. Stay strategic. Telling story with me, where stories come back swinging.